It's 2024, ladies and gents, and the Starfield discourse is going nowhere. If you thought a new year, new me feeling might spread across the galaxy, it's very much more of the same as Starfield enters 2024 with mostly negative reviews on Steam. And so we find ourselves asking, is this really Starfield's fault? Or should we be taking a broader view at Bethesda and just how far games have come in recent years? Recent Steam reviews at the time of writing have left Bethesda's flagship space RPG clinging to Steam's airlock. With 29% of reviews scored positive in the last 30 days, its overall rating is still mixed, with 64% positive reviews, but what's been the cause of the slew of negativity? Well, a lot of it is probably down to Bethesda's initial response when those first claims of the game being a bit boring were first thrown out into the ether. No one likes it when people are mean about something you've made, and it's probably fair to say that as a group, gamers aren't ones to exactly hold back, but a bunch of apparently officially affiliated with Bethesda devs taking criticism of their game maybe a little too personally wasn't the best way to get into the Steam community's good graces. Now, to be fair to Starfield, Steam's system of thumbs up, thumbs down is lacking a bit of nuance. You either like a game or you don't, so it's not the be-all end-all of game review systems. And every now and then, the community start throwing downvotes at a game more because of how they feel about it or the people who made it, or a perceived poor response from those people who made it, rather than anything to do with the game itself. Read up on Overwatch 2's dive into the realms of worst reviewed Steam games in history for a very recent example of that. But rifling through the reviews, you will see the same old word popping up again and again. Starfield's world, or its entire universe to be more accurate, is boring. And it's not like Bethesda haven't tried, or indeed are still trying, to address those claims from players head on, and not just with some vague comments about, trying to play the game a bit differently. Bethesda have kept the content coming to Starfield and are planning on supporting it for a very long time to come. This is their flagship game that needs to support their ecosystem most likely up until Elder Scrolls 6 comes out. And God knows how long we could be waiting on that, so there's a strong incentive for them to get their space house in order here. But the truth of it is, a lot of their plans for new features and content, from things that will actually change how the game plays entirely, like new ways to travel through space, to incredibly basic stuff like an in-game map for the gargantuan cities that you have to traipse through currently without a GPS, mostly has the feeling of stuff that kind of should have been there to begin with. So a lot went wrong for Starfield. What should have been Bethesda's next big thing, the great Skyrim in space we'd been waiting on, has fallen out of the sky and is rapidly breaking up on entry. But maybe that's exactly why. Bethesda essentially made Skyrim in space, and in 2024, that's not really enough anymore. In a year where Baldur's Gate 3, and even to a lesser extent Tears of the Kingdom, running, remember, on the now almost 7-year-old Nintendo Switch, reached new heights of depth and storytelling meshed with some downright ridiculous levels of exploration, with new secrets and new adventures to discover around every corner. Bethesda's more classic approach of a sea as shallow as a puddle with a few deep spots here and there to flesh out the story just doesn't quite hit like it used to. And the good old Bethesda zoom in onto the lights on but no one's home expression of whatever NPC you happen to have come across was great in Oblivion, but they didn't even really have it in Skyrim, so what made them think it was suddenly going to work in Starfield? Especially when you compare it to the fully motion captured and incredible voice acting performances that AAA games are now producing on the regular. Even Starfield's quest system, which had the potential to really do some unique science fiction stuff with a literal universe to play in, even if a lot of it was procedurally generated, eventually boiled down to the good old fashioned Bethesda fetch quest with the occasional major doohickey of destiny thrown in to keep the story moving forward. In an attempt to keep it simple, in what seems like an attempt to basically make Skyrim in space, in an attempt to appeal to the largest possible audience of people they could muster, Bethesda have eventually managed to please almost no one, because Starfield could and should have been great if they'd just evolved some of their ideas beyond the stuff we've come to expect from Bethesda. Skyrim succeeded partly because of the time it was in. It gave players a rich, if a little shallow, world to explore where a quest would invariably lead you off the beaten track and towards a new adventure, even if it was just duking it out with a vampire in a cave you just found. That was the magic, and Starfield just doesn't have that going for it. There was no pull. Nothing to keep you exploring beyond that surface level, nothing trying to coax you further in. There's only so many times you can be disappointed by the game asking you to do the same thing over and over again. It's like they forgot that their games were full of fun and interesting things to do, and instead focused on making the space the player can walk around in as big as physically possible. Whether it was actually boring or not seems to have ultimately been secondary. And sure, the map size was one of the reasons we've enjoyed Elder Scrolls and Fallout games gone by, but it was far from the only one. It's the stories you create in that space that make it interesting. And without them, as Steam reviews of recent past will attest, your game quickly becomes boring. And look, maybe Bethesda can still pull this one round. Maybe they can repair the hyperdrive and send Starfield to a new frontier. Maybe we're being a bit harsh. No Man's Sky is still here, against absolutely astronomical odds, by the way, after a launch cycle that was magnitudes worse than Starfield's, to the point where many are now using it as an example of what Starfield space travel should have been. And that's a valid critique, but let's not pretend that No Man's Sky got it right first time. Cyberpunk 2077 is almost unrecognisable to the game it was when it first launched, not just from a stability and glitch perspective, but in terms of the sheer amount of new content that's been added over the last year. And let's not forget the mods. If Skyrim can dine out on Creation Club to this day, there's no reason Starfield can't live long and prosper too. So is Starfield boring? Well, ultimately that depends on your perspective, but if there's one lesson Bethesda need to learn from Starfield, is that their design philosophies of old are desperately in need of an upgrade. The ultimate success or failure of Starfield, and looking further ahead, even Elder Scrolls 6, might well depend on it. Thanks for watching. Click that subscribe button if you fancy watching more videos like this, and while we've got you here at GG Recon, check out these videos here.